Good morning, everyone. We are live back here at Turning Point USA's AmericaFest 2025, live here at the Phoenix Convention Center, right here at the Main Street Media Network booth. My name is Michael Rebello. I'm the host of the Ever Forward Mindset podcast. I'm a 20-year-old entrepreneur who chose entrepreneurship over the traditional college path. I'm inspired and driven by the goal to retire my mother and to also help middle Americans like her on Main Street to learn about and invest in multifamily real estate syndications to build long-lasting financial freedom. I'm also an advocate for people in my generation of Gen Z to start a podcast, get their voice out there, and to become young capitalists and entrepreneurs. And today on our podcast, I'm joined by Greg Roeberg. How you doing, my friend?
Hello, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Of
Pleasure
course.
to be on.
Oh, pleasure's mine. So, Greg, I know a little bit about you. We had some conversations earlier today and also yesterday. But to my audience, they may not know who you are. Give us a little bit of a brief introduction. Why are you here today? What got you to where you are today?
Sure. So I just announced I'm running for Arizona Attorney General. I was a Trump campaign attorney for 2024 and have worked in the Trump team in the campaign capacity for about 10 years now, starting in 16. I've gotten into the race because I'm frustrated that a lot of folks in the Republican Party in Arizona aren't doing enough for elections, and elections is the corner piece of what brought me into this world. Now, the reason I'm on your show, prior to this, I've been a business attorney in Arizona working with startups and entrepreneurs, and I myself am an entrepreneur for about 20 years. I went to college and law school at Georgetown University back in Washington, D.C. During law school, I visited a friend in Arizona. I fell in love with the place, and the rest is history. And so, if not for being drawn into Donald Trump's message and the platform and the problems dealing with elections here in Arizona, I would be content to be a business attorney for my entire career. I'm passionate about business, passionate about startups, passionate about young people getting in the space, and I'm here to answer some questions.
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much. And thank you for what you're doing as well here in the state of Arizona. But before we dive into business, there's one particular thing I want to hear from you. You're saying that the Republican Party in the state of Arizona isn't doing enough. To me, that's concerning because I at least want to know, is our government doing what they're supposed to do? So walk us through that. What are you seeing that the Republican Party isn't doing right now that they should be doing at least?
So the Republican Party is limited. Right now at our state level, we have a Democrat governor, Democrat Secretary of State, Democrat Attorney General, and 2 Democrat senators, even though I would argue Arizona is a leans red state. So the reason they're not doing enough about this is we are at a disadvantage from an electoral standpoint. However, places like the state legislature, places like the county do have the authority to file lawsuits and challenge actions with regards to elections. They do some of it. We do have some happy warriors. We do have some folks that are excellent. I don't want to name some because I won't remember all of them, right?
Right.
But I've been speaking with some folks here in the Turning Point community, which are great. So our grassroots, I would argue in Arizona, is the most passionate, honest, hardworking grassroots in the state of Arizona for the Republican Party, and this Turning Point environment really allows them to thrive. That said, we do have what people call the establishment Republicans, or the rhinos, who kind of go along, get along, they say what they need to say in the elections, and then when they get into office, they don't step up and fight the fight. They just want to go along, get along, and so many of us here in the grassroots that I consider myself part of are disappointed in that. And so for me, enough is enough. I'm stepping up, and we're in it to win it.
I love that. You know what, Greg, you're taking the standpoint of there's a job that needs to be done and nobody's fulfilling it. I love that you're taking that torch to say, nobody's going to do it, I'm going to do it. So which kind of segues into what I wanted to ask you earlier is with your entrepreneurial career. What got you to be an entrepreneur? What sparked that? Because being an entrepreneur, you have to be your boss and the employee, which there's a lot of people today that don't want to be entrepreneurs because that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But you were like, there's a job that needs to be done, I'm going to get it done. So what sparked that? What brought you into the entrepreneurial world?
So I started out, I think probably like a lot of your viewers, I just went to college because that's what people told me to do, right? And then I went a step further where I was finishing college and I was doing really well with academics and standardized tests and all that. And so I had an opportunity to go to a really excellent law school. And so I took that path, right?
Right.
But you're a little young for this, but there was a line I tell people by Biggie Smalls. He would say, I got lawyers watching lawyers, so I don't go broke, right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
So my theory was I would be my own lawyer watching my lawyers, but my goal was always entrepreneurship. In college and law school, in those days with websites, I had some roommates, we started some website businesses, we were selling cameras online, a lot of it, and I really appreciate where you are, because when I was your age, I was almost doing entrepreneurial projects for fun and just kind of curiosity to see if I could do it. right? And that's an important spark. The passion is important, but the passion is nothing without execution. And the fact that you're sitting here and your media company has grown to the point where it is, this is not just something where you're passionate about doing a podcast, you're passionate about speaking to people, you're turning it into an organization that can grow and hopefully grow after you're gone, right? And so, I'm really impressed by that. But again, I would have, when I was your age, in early 20s, if I had done something like this, my roommates and I would have set up a podcast, we would have gone through all the motions of production, learned how to do everything, learned how to do audio editing, video editing, all of the above, and then once we had 3 or 4 good shows, we'd be like, oh, we did it, and that was kind of the end of it. We weren't looking at it as sort of a lifestyle. We were looking at it almost as like lab experiment entrepreneurship.
Right, the present day plan, not the long-term plan.
Exactly. So then but I always had that spark in me, and when I moved out to Arizona, I was a young guy, I was 25, but I looked like I was 19, right? And so I worked with a lot of young entrepreneurs who maybe couldn't afford to pay legal bills, but they would bring me in not really as the lawyer, but as a business partner with lawyer experience. And most of those projects didn't pan out, but I learned a lot from all of them, and I applied them to working with my clients on their startup needs. Be it intellectual property issues, be it tax issues, be it just general partnership or corporation issues, things like that.
I love that. And you know what? What's nice about this as well is being an entrepreneur, you have to see the value.
Yeah.
You have to see the issue at hand and take advantage of it, not take advantage of it, at least be the solution.
Sure.
Because it's great, like you said, hey, it's great to start a business, have some fun, but it's a legit business.
Right.
You have to have systems in place. In fact, yesterday I was talking to a gentleman who's around my age who was talking about the same thing. You need to have systems in place in order to scale your business. And I'm sure you came across those crossroads before. You're like, I can't just do this on my own. I need to have employees, I need to have team members, I need to have systems in place in order to scale this and to solve the issues at hand. But what I do want to ask you is, what was your biggest pivotal moment for success where you're like, wow, I made it, and it was like this catalyst for you to keep going, keep pushing forward?
So I really, like I said, when I early on started my law practice, right, I was sort of an entrepreneur-focused individual who had a law practice to fall back on, right? But as time went by and I got into my mid-20s, late 20s, and into my 30s, I started really gaining a quality reputation in the business community in Scottsdale, where I'm from.
Right.
And a lot of business owners who were 20, 30 years older than me started seeking out my counsel. And that's when I was really like, wow, this guy who's got many millions of dollars and maybe has done real estate development projects, and he calls me up and he's saying, I want your input on really business advice, because a lot of business owners, they bring their lawyer in thinking that it's sort of an cross the I, or what is it, dot the I, cross the T position, but it often morphs into a general business advisor. And so I started really appreciating that the knowledge I had gotten going through the trenches of startups and entrepreneurship now can really apply, where I have a lot of valuable knowledge to people who have already achieved tremendous success and helping them go to the next level of their careers. And so that, I would say, probably around, as I was coming on 30, and also, it was about 5-6 years into my legal career, I started looking less like a kid. I'm sure you might run into that sometimes.
I sometimes do. That's why I grew out the facial hair.
That's smart. That's smart. I don't know if mine would have worked, and at least in those days. And so now, that's sort of when my law practice took off. I knew that if I wanted to maintain my law practice, it would be able to sustain me for a career. And that was, that's a good feeling, because when you're an entrepreneur, and a lot of your viewers and your listeners will understand this, you don't necessarily know where your next paycheck's coming, right? And you had a good February, but what's going to happen in March, right?
It's true.
And there's a lot of tension on that. And once you get to a place where you can have sustainable income that can support you and last, and especially, I didn't get married until later. I think I was 36 when I got married. No, 38 when I got married. And so I was still 31, 32. I didn't have a family, so I didn't need to, fly on private jets and buy yachts, right?
Right.
But I did need to make sure that I was financially stable. And it was a subtle, steady growth, I would say. So I land one big client or another, and sort of I look back and realize that the worries I had when I was 25, 26, I no longer had at 32, 33, right? That was probably the biggest thing. And then when you achieve that sort of financial freedom, you then have more liberty to go out and pursue things that truly interest you. And that's how I got into politics, sort of in my mid-30s, and I was never going to run for office. This is the first time I'm running for anything, honestly. Yeah. But I got involved with the Trump campaign, and I got involved with the Republican Party more so. I was always a Republican, but I wasn't a passionate Republican.
Yeah.
And then Turning Point really took off here in my hometown, or I'm from Scottsdale, it's one town over from Phoenix, and the Republican conservative movement really drew me in. And then my niche was how can I help, and it was identified I could help on the election front because, especially in Arizona, but there's a lot of election issues the past few elections.
Right, and there's a couple of things that you address in there that I resonate with, is financial stability and also reflection. Where you knew that, yeah, February is great, but what about March? You could be all the way up here, and then there's a massive dip for the next couple of months.
And that happened. That's happened to me over my career. Yeah,
absolutely. And that financial stability, it's where you have to say, like, okay, I need a prep. I need to actually conduct like a business owner, not an entrepreneur, a business owner, where it's like, I have to have these systems in place. What happens if the next 2 months aren't great? What's my budget look like? What does my income look like? Allocating my assets here. There's a lot of people in my generation that just want the instant gratification.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I got my big client, I got a $50,000 acquisition fee, they go and spend it, and then all of a sudden the next 2 months it's bone dry, and they're back to square one.
Right.
With trying to figure out where they are. You understood that too. But like you said, when you land like a big client, you start to get your business up and running, you realize that the worries you had many years ago, you didn't have that day. And you're like,
right.
All right.
I had different worries.
Cool.
My worries evolved, right?
Yes.
And as my career evolved. And yeah, the one sort of, I don't know if you can call it a downside, but one thing you sort of outgrow as your career expands as an entrepreneur is a big, score. Let's say you sold a big house and got a commission check. Let's say you made a big sale. Let's say you landed a big client, right? And you have unexpected large income coming in, right? The first handful of times you do that, that is like Christmas morning, right? That is just like, I can't believe it. Like, we have to celebrate, right?
Right.
Once that happens to you over a certain number of times, it starts becoming more of a relief. Like, okay, good. Now, in theory, I'm good for 13 months, right? Now, in theory, I'm good for 7 months, whatever it is.
You're able to plan.
Or, good, now I can take that money and put it towards another investment that I was eyeing, right?
Right.
But so when you're starting out young, it's high highs and low lows, right?
Very much.
As you kind of, things stabilize, and again, and I've been married about, it's coming up on 6 years, and we have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old son. We have 2 sons. Your priorities shift a little bit. I'm not necessarily, just live and die for the next sale, the next deal, the next client, right? You gain more perspective, but I would argue having the financial stability is what allows you to gain that perspective, because if you don't have that stability, you're either swimming or you're dying, right?
That's right.
So that's, for me, worked out, and I met my wife, I'm very lucky, but for me, having a family a little later, allowed me more flexibility in my entrepreneurial career.
I love that. Hey, you know what? You understand that with financial stability, you're able to really dedicate your personal time to things you enjoy, like politics, your family, your 2 kids. Like, that's important, because there's a lot of people that just like work, but what are you working for? You understand that you knew exactly what you're working for to get your time back so that you can enjoy the things you enjoy doing. Politics, spending time with your family. Your worries got bigger, your priorities started to shift.
Right.
But you were able to allocate different things, different processes, systems, and budgets to allocate for that. So I love that. And
Appreciate
to wrap up our episode really quickly, Greg, I want to ask you this. What is one message that you would share to my generation here at Turning Point USA when they want to become an entrepreneur, when they want to pursue the things they enjoy? From your perspective and your experience, what should we be doing right now in this day and age, in this economy, in this political climate? What should we be doing to stay ahead of the curve and to make sure we achieve our goals?
So I'll tell you some personal background on this, and you've heard a lot of this advice a lot, I'm sure, but everything has changed with AI, okay? And so to put things in perspective, I'm a self-taught computer programmer. Again, it was a project when I had some liberty to try things. I've made a couple iOS apps. For some friends, they wanted an app, and to learn how to program, I made an iOS app, put it in the App Store, and I can't convey to you hours after hours after hours of coding where, you start out so just clueless, and you learn quickly, but at the very beginning, you learn very slowly, right? And so I remember it was 3 of us, and we were coding something up, and it took us 2 days to figure out what we were doing wrong, and it was, in one of our codes, line of codes, there was a backslash instead of a forward slash, okay? And this is how old I am, okay? And now, I wouldn't even, if I was an entrepreneur in the tech space making an app, I would learn high level what coding's about, but I wouldn't even bother going into the weeds, because AI comes along and replaces that. AI's not quite there yet, but for in your realm, video editing, audio editing,
absolutely.
It helps, but you still have to put in, if you're going on Premiere Pro or Final Cut or whatever you're using, you still have to put in hours of work. That's next couple years, that's going away, right? And so you have so many tools where you don't necessarily have to go down into the bottom dredges and just have to grind and grind and grind to learn whether or not your ideas can work, right? So my advice to a young entrepreneur now would be sort of rapid validation. I'm sure you hear this a lot, but if you have an idea, make a landing page with a sign-up form and validate the idea, see if people are, and market it. See if people are interested in the idea prior to building it. Because once they're interested in the idea, you can build it really quickly, and you can also iterate and take their advice and change things over and over again. So,
absolutely.
So that would, I would, and I know again, if your generation growing up with this AI revolution, it's a tremendous opportunity, but really who's going to solve the problems are the people that have vision and use AI as tools to take a shortcut to achieving that vision. That would be my tip for young folks your age starting out now.
I love that. Greg, thank you so much for sharing that. With you on your campaign for becoming Attorney General for the state of Arizona, where could we learn more about you, your mission, and what you are providing for the state of Arizona right now?
Sure. So my platform is three things. It's safe streets, strong borders, secure elections, okay? And we just launched a couple weeks ago, we just launched a new X account. It's Greg for AZ, or at Greg for AZ, and that's FOR. So GREG FORAZ. If you could go on there, you could be one of my first followers. I'd appreciate that. And on there, you can follow information about the Arizona race and just general politics in Arizona. I'm not going to have a ton of business-related things on there, at least for now.
Right.
But there's links to my other socials where you could learn from it. And if you have a quick question, go on my Twitter, reach out. I've done this for friends and families for years, right? Like, I just want to ask a lawyer, hey, here's a 3-sentence question. I can't guarantee I'll get back to all of them, but go on there, message me on Twitter, and if you got something quick, shoot it over. It'll take me 5 minutes, I can answer. Okay?
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much. To learn more about Greg and what he's doing, email us at Greg Roeberg, ROEBERG, at mainstreetmedianetwork.com to learn more about his political campaign, his mission, his story, and what he is offering for the great state of Arizona. And to learn more about our podcast and what we do here at Main Street Media Network, visit us at mainstreetmedianetwork.com and www.everforwardcapitalpartners.com to see our interviewees, what we have to offer, and also our story. To my audience out there, build yourself better and bigger every day. Live better, live bigger. Always move ever forward. And Greg, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your value today.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate everything you do.
Of course.